Stand before a wild, raging river. Watch as it breaks its banks, tearing ancient trees from the soil, crushing stone and drowning the harvest. It is chaos. It is pure, unbridled destruction. But if you take that exact same water, that exact same violent, terrifying force, and you encase it within the concrete walls of a hydroelectric dam, it stops destroying the village. Instead, it generates enough power to illuminate an entire empire. The water did not change, the structure around it did. Society has lied to you about your own biology. They have convinced you that your rage is a sickness. They have told you that your anxiety is a weakness, a flaw in your character that must be medicated, suppressed, and shamed into silence. They want you to believe that you are broken because you feel a fire burning in your chest. You are not broken. You are simply a wild river flooding your own mind. We live in a modern system that heavily profits from keeping you docile. A population without fire is easy to manage. But let us look at the raw mechanics of nature. Biologically, anxiety and anger are not moral failures. They are hyper-concentrated chemical cocktails of cortisol, adrenaline, and dopamine. When your heart races, when your jaw clenches, when your mind races with 1,000 thoughts a second, your body is not failing you. It is preparing you for combat. It is giving you hunting fuel. Today, we are going to deconstruct the 4 protocols of the alchemical fire. We will learn exactly how to build the dam. Pay very close attention to the discourse today, because the 4th protocol is the phase of execution, and it is where 99% of people fail. They lack the discipline to hold the pressure, and they end up burning themselves to ash. If you are ready to forge a weapon from your own wounds, walk with me now. To harness a fire, you must first stop trying to swallow it. Modern culture is obsessed with the illusion of suppression. From a young age, you are taught to be polite. When someone disrespects you, you are told to be the bigger person and let it go. When you feel a deep, terrifying anxiety about your future, you are told to just think positive and smile. We have created a society of people walking around with fake smiles, carrying volcanic pressure inside their veins. In physics, the first law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form to another. Your nervous system operates on this exact same universal law. When a boundary is crossed, or when your survival is threatened, your sympathetic nervous system activates. Your brain signals the adrenal glands to release a flood of hormones. Blood is pulled from your digestive tract and pushed into your muscles. Your pupils dilate to focus on the threat. Your body has just manufactured a massive amount of kinetic energy. If you force a smile, bite your tongue, and tell yourself to just let it go, where does that energy go? It does not evaporate. It does not disappear into the air. Because you did not give it an external target, it turns inward. It attacks the host. This swallowed fire is the root of profound suffering. When anger and anxiety are trapped inside the body with nowhere to go, they rot. They manifest as autoimmune responses, as chronic tension in the neck and shoulders, as sudden, inexplicable panic attacks in the middle of the night. Look closely at the psychology of deep depression. Many people believe depression is a state of sadness or emptiness. But in many cases, depression is not sadness at all. Depression is simply rage that has been frozen and turned inward against the self. It is the exhaustion of a mind that spends all of its vital energy holding down a beast that is desperately trying to escape. Think of a pressure cooker on a hot stove. The water is boiling. The steam is expanding. If you seal the lid completely shut and refuse to let any steam escape, you have not achieved peace. You have merely delayed an explosion. And when that explosion finally happens, it will be catastrophic. You will snap at someone you love. You will destroy a relationship. You will sabotage your own life because the pressure had to find a crack in the iron. You cannot meditate your way out of a biological imperative. You cannot breathe away a flood of adrenaline that was designed to help you survive the wilderness. Sitting on a cushion and trying to force your mind to be perfectly still while your blood is screaming for action is a battle against your own biology. True mastery of the mind does not mean you never feel angry. True mastery means you feel the anger deeply, you respect its raw power, and you decide exactly where that power will strike. The Shaolin monk does not possess a quiet mind because he lacks fire. He possesses a quiet mind because he knows exactly how to channel his fire into the blade. He does not fear the flame because he is the master of the forge. To reach this level of sovereignty, you must fundamentally change your relationship with the trigger. You must stop looking at the person or the situation that made you angry as the center of your universe. You must extract the fuel and discard the match. This brings us to the profound necessity of decoupling the flame. The exact method of taking the energy of destruction and redirecting it toward the architecture of your own empire. What does the average human do when struck by the sudden, violent jolt of anger? They immediately seek to destroy the trigger. If someone cuts them off in traffic, they scream, they hit the steering wheel, they let the adrenaline completely hijack their vocal cords and their rationality. If they receive an insulting message, they spend an hour vibrating with rage, frantically typing out a response to prove they are right. They take this magnificent biological surge of power, a surge chemically designed by millions of years of evolution to help them survive a life or death encounter, and they waste it on a trivial, meaningless moment. They throw their gold into the mud. This is reactive anger. It is the behavior of an animal caught in a trap, biting blindly at the iron teeth. It is loud, it is sloppy, and it is entirely powerless. To weaponize your anger, you must master the profound art of decoupling. You must surgically separate the biological energy from the psychological trigger. In the ancient Taoist understanding of the world, Qi, vital energy, possesses no inherent morality. It does not know right from wrong. It is neither good nor evil. It is simply force. A raging fire can burn down your home, or it can be used to forge a sword of unparalleled sharpness. The fire does not care. It only requires direction. The Shaolin warrior understands that emotion is a servant, not a master. When you allow your trigger to dictate your reaction, you have handed the remote control of your nervous system to your enemy. You have made yourself a slave to their behavior. Decoupling is the act of taking that remote control back. When someone disrespects you, when a business deal collapses, when you are betrayed by someone you trusted, your body is suddenly flooded with this raw, combustible qi. The ordinary person takes that fire and throws it directly back at the person who caused it, burning themselves in the process. But the sovereign mind does something entirely different. The master looks at the betrayal, feels the intense boiling heat rising in the chest and says, "Thank you for the free firewood." You do not text them back. You do not scream. You take that massive spike of adrenaline, you close your mouth, and you carry that energy directly into your own arena. You take that rage into the gym, and you lift the heavy iron until your muscles tear and the cortisol is completely flushed from your system. You take that intense, buzzing anxiety, and you sit at your desk in pure silence, channeling that kinetic energy into building your business, studying your craft, and constructing your unassailable escape route. You begin to use the venom of your enemies as the very fuel that accelerates your ascension. You literally build your empire using the heavy bricks they threw at your head. This is the ultimate alchemy of power. You stop being the victim of your triggers and you start treating them as unlimited energy resources. You shift from hot, chaotic rage into cold, calculated ire. But to contain a fire that burns this hot, you cannot rely on a fragile container. If you place a raging 1,000-degree fire inside a paper cup, it will burn through in seconds, destroying everything around it. To harness the alchemical flame of rage and anxiety, you must construct a furnace of solid iron. In the architecture of human life, that iron furnace is called extreme discipline. Let us look deeply at anxiety. Anxiety is widely misunderstood as a flaw, a malfunction of the mind. But in many cases, anxiety is simply trapped kinetic energy vibrating within a structureless life. Your body is preparing for a battle that your mind has not yet defined. If you have no rigid routine, if you have no physical outlet, if you have no singular demanding purpose, then the raw, explosive energy your body produces has nowhere to go. It bounces off the walls of your skull. It keeps you awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling. It manifests as a paralyzing fear of the future, precisely because the energy is vast, but the container is weak. Look at the marvel of a combustion engine. Inside the engine of a high-performance vehicle, there are thousands of violent, fiery explosions happening every single minute. It is pure, devastating chaos. But because those explosions are contained within walls of thick steel and directed through a highly disciplined, synchronized mechanical structure, they do not destroy the car. They propel tons of heavy metal forward at incredible, terrifying speeds. Your life must become that engine. You must forge unbreakable daily routines. You must wake up at the exact same time every single day. You must train your physical body rigorously to process the chemical load. You must set absolute, impenetrable boundaries on your focus and your time. Discipline is not a punishment. Discipline is not a restriction of your freedom. Discipline is the steel cylinder that contains your explosive energy. When you are fiercely disciplined, you no longer fear your own anxiety. You recognize it for what it truly is, the spark plug igniting the fuel. When you feel that familiar, anxious vibration in your chest, you do not panic. You do not reach for a distraction. You immediately plug it into the system. You direct it toward the task at hand. You look at the obstacle in front of you and you say, "My body is giving me the exact energy required to conquer this day, and I will not waste a single drop." You transform the chaotic, flooding river into the towering hydroelectric dam. You command the electricity. You own the power. But holding this level of internal pressure requires a specific mindset. It requires you to operate in a state that seems entirely paradoxical to the outside world. It is the realm where the fire burns blue, where the anger is no longer loud and chaotic, but silent, calculating, and lethal to any obstacle in its path. This leads us to the fourth and most dangerous protocol of this transformation. The phase where 99% of those who attempt this alchemy fail because they let the fire consume their patience. The phase of execution, where you must learn to become the absolute master of the cold fire. But before you can step into that final phase of execution, before you can wield this cold fire, you must ruthlessly examine the integrity of your iron furnace. You must look for the leaks. 99% of people fail to transform their rage and anxiety into power, not because they lack the fire, but because they bleed their power into the dirt. They build the dam, but they leave the release valves wide open. What is a release valve? It is the cheap, momentary comfort you seek when the internal pressure gets too high. Think about what happens when you experience a massive surge of frustration. A project fails, a person betrays you, or the crushing weight of anxiety tightens your chest. Your body has just handed you a reservoir of potent biological fuel. But instead of channeling it into your empire, what do? You pick up your phone. You write a furious, passive-aggressive comment on the internet. You call a friend and you complain for an hour about how unfair the situation is. You gossip. You seek validation. Modern culture calls this venting. They tell you it is healthy to let it all out. But I want you to look at the physics of venting. When you vent, you open a valve. You let the high-pressure steam escape into the air. It feels good for a few seconds. It gives your brain a cheap, tiny hit of dopamine. But you have accomplished absolutely nothing. You have taken the exact kinetic energy that was required to build your life, to lift the heavy iron, to study the complex subject, and you have exhaled it into the wind. When you complain, you are speaking the language of the victim. You are signaling to your own nervous system that you are powerless and that your only recourse is to make noise. A master does not complain. A sovereign mind understands that every complaint is a leak in the dam. When the fire rises, you must refuse the cheap release. You must close your mouth. You must sit with the extreme discomfort of the heat. You must let the pressure build inside the iron cylinder of your discipline, because without pressure, the engine cannot move the wheels. Let us look closely at the profound biology of this focus. When cortisol and adrenaline flood your system, they are designed by millions of years of evolution to do one specific thing: narrow your visual and mental focus. In the wild, if a predator attacks, your brain immediately shuts down your digestion. It shuts down peripheral distractions. It forces 100% of your cognitive capacity to lock onto the threat. That biological hyperfocus is a superpower. It is the ultimate state of flow. But in the modern world, there is no physical predator in the room. The threat is a thought. The threat is an email. The threat is a memory. Because there is no physical target, you take this magnificent biological hyperfocus and you turn it against yourself. You use it to overthink your insecurities. You use it to obsess over scenarios that have not even happened. You become a prisoner of your own accelerated mind. To break this illusion, you must give your biology a target. You must give the tiger a name. When the anxiety hits, when the rage boils, you do not try to calm down. Calming down is a lie you tell a body that is primed for war. Instead, you lock that narrowed, hyper-focused vision onto your purpose. The tiger is your business. The tiger is your physical training. The tiger is your financial independence. You point the biological weapon at the obstacle, and you pull the trigger. You use the anxiety to outwork your competition. You use the rage to shatter your own limitations. But sometimes the mind is simply too chaotic. The storm of thoughts is too dense. In processing these moments, you cannot think your way out of the fire. The mind cannot tame the mind when it is burning. This is a fundamental principle in the Shaolin arts. When the mind is a hurricane, the body must become the mountain. You must anchor the kinetic energy into the physical realm. When you are vibrating with anxiety, your body is begging for movement. It is demanding that you metabolize the chemical storm. You must force the body to endure voluntary hardship. You run until your lungs burn. You lift the heavy weight until your arms fail. You submerge your body in freezing cold water. You use intense physical discipline to burn off the excess cortisol, leaving only the pure, refined focus behind. You remind your nervous system that you are the commander of the vessel. The anxiety does not own the body. You own the body. And you will dictate exactly how and when this energy is spent. There is a profound, quiet confidence that begins to grow inside you when you master this process. You stop being afraid of the world. You stop being terrified of stressful situations, of conflicts, or of failures. Because you realize that no matter what the world throws at you, no matter how much they disrespect you or how difficult the path becomes, they are only handing you more fuel. They think they are breaking you, but they are actually feeding your furnace. This is the ultimate unfair advantage. While the rest of the world is paralyzed by their anxiety, while your enemies are blinded by their reactive, sloppy rage, you are sitting in the center of the storm, calmly organizing your resources. You become untouchable. But there is one final test. Once the dam is built, once the leaks are sealed, and the energy is perfectly contained, you must release it. But you do not release it like a wild explosion. You release it like a laser. This brings us to the ultimate evolution of the warrior's mind, the precise, calculated, and lethal application of the cold fire. It is the phase of execution, and it is here that you must completely abandon the concept of time. We enter the final and most dangerous phase of this alchemical process. You have stopped swallowing the fire. You have decoupled your biological energy from the triggers of your enemies. You have built the iron furnace of extreme discipline, sealing every leak where your power used to escape. Now, you stand before the execution. This is where 99% of people fail. They fail because anger, by its very biological nature, demands immediate release. When your veins are flooded with adrenaline and cortisol, your primal brain screams at you to act right now. It wants the instant gratification of a loud victory. It wants you to quit the job that disrespects you today. It wants you to launch the project before it is ready, just to prove your worth to the world. It wants to burn everything down. But hot fire is sloppy. Hot fire consumes the forest, but it also consumes the creature that started the spark. To achieve absolute sovereignty, you must master the lethal art of the cold fire. You must take the burning, white-hot rage of your ambition, the suffocating pressure of your anxiety, and you must freeze it into a calculated, mechanical patience. Look at the apex predators of the natural world. Observe the praying mantis or the black mamba. When the predator is hunting, it does not run around the jungle making noise. It does not pace back and forth, complaining about its hunger. It finds the perfect vantage point, and it becomes absolutely, terrifyingly still. It blends into the environment. To the untrained eye, it looks asleep. It looks harmless. But beneath that absolute stillness, the nervous system is completely primed. The muscles are coiled like heavy steel springs. The heart is pumping highly oxygenated blood to the extremities. The creature is vibrating with lethal kinetic energy, entirely focused on a single point in space. It will wait for hours. It will wait for days if necessary. And when the prey steps into the exact millimeter of the striking zone, the release of energy is instantaneous, flawless, and devastating. You must become the mantis. You are furiously dissatisfied with your current reality. You look at your financial situation, your physical health, or the people who look down on you, and you feel a deep, visceral rage. Good. That anger is your biological compass, telling you that you are meant for a higher altitude. But instead of throwing a tantrum, you execute your escape plan with the chilling patience of a glacier. You wake up in the freezing dark, hours before your competitors, and you do the work in total silence. You endure the toxic environment, the disrespectful boss, or the exhausting circumstances with a calm, unbothered smile on your face, because you know something they do not. You know that every single night you are secretly building the machine that will render them completely obsolete. You do not argue with them. You do not warn them of your arrival. You simply let them sleep while you conquer their territory. This is what it means to weaponize your anxiety. Anxiety is no longer a panic attack about what might go wrong. It is the high-octane fuel that forces you to prepare so obsessively that failure becomes mathematically impossible. You study the market, you train your body, you refine your mind until your competence is so undeniable that the world has no choice but to bow to your skill. When you operate with cold fire, your dopamine system undergoes a profound rewiring. The average human gets their dopamine from the release of the anger, from the screaming, the complaining, the sudden outburst. But the master rewires their brain to extract massive amounts of dopamine from the friction of the delay. The waiting itself becomes intoxicating. The discipline of holding the sword in the scabbard, knowing exactly how sharp the blade is, becomes the ultimate source of quiet power. You realize that true peace is not the absence of capacity for violence. A rabbit is peaceful, but only because it has no teeth and no claws. It is harmless, and therefore it is a victim to the world. A Shaolin warrior is peaceful by choice. He possesses the absolute capacity for devastating destruction, but he keeps the sword sheathed. That is not harmlessness. That is sovereignty. The world will tell you to soften your edges. They will tell you that your intensity is too much.
They will try to drug your fire and shame your ambition. Because a human being who has harnessed their own rage and anxiety is a human being who can no longer be controlled by the system. Do not apologize for the temperature of your spirit. Do not ask for permission to burn. The universe did not place this massive reservoir of kinetic energy inside your chest so you could sit quietly and wait for the end of your days. It gave you this river so you could build the dam.
It gave you this pressure so you could forge the steel. The lesson is complete. The forge is now closed. The weapon is ready. From this moment forward, you will never again look at your anxiety as a disease. You will never again look at your anger as a flaw. They are the heavy, raw materials of your ascension. But hearing these words changes nothing if you do not anchor them into your reality. Philosophy without execution is just intellectual entertainment. You must draw a line in the sand. You must separate the old, reactive, suffering version of yourself from the cold, calculating architect you are about to become. If you have understood the profound alchemy we have discussed today, it is time to make your vow. I do not want your praise. I do not want your fleeting motivation. I want your absolute, unbreakable commitment to your own potential. If you are truly ready to leave the old version of you behind, seal your fate in the comments below. Write only these words: I am the Forge. Let that be your digital oath. Let it be the heavy iron door slamming shut on your past. The river has been tamed. The power is yours. The path is open. Amituofo.